don't have to introduce myself in that way, but I really feel like I did today. I'm a faculty member in psychology and women's studies, and I'm the director of the advanced program here. The advanced program is probably not something that even many of you from the University of Michigan know about, because its primary focus is on the experiences of faculty and trying to make sure the environment here is good for faculty of all sorts in all fields. And so I've spent a lot of my time in the advanced program thinking about the issues for women in STEM fields in general, and physics in particular, along with lots of colleagues, including Jim McKay and many other, Myron Campbell, who's here somewhere, many other, Jennifer Ogilvie, Christina Avila, lots of the colleagues, in Henrietta Elbank, people you've already met. So these are all people I learn from, and try to be sure things are going well. I love hearing. I love it here. That's good news for me. So we're having more technical. No, it's fine. Go ahead. For some reason, this works as a presenter view and not. No, don't be sorry. That's totally fine. So, okay. So I'm going to give you a few minutes of a social science view of the issues that we know something about in social science fields, about the experience of women in physics. And when I talk about the experience of women in physics, I'm going to draw very loosely. I'm not going to tell you about studies. I'm going to give you some generalizations about the experiences of women in science in general, but especially in fields where women are outnumbered to a large degree, which some people have already been bringing up. Many women scientists have, over the years I've been doing this, since 2001, have told me they don't really like to think about this problem, this question of what about being a woman in whatever field it is, because they think it might be depressing or discouraging, and they don't want to talk to their students about it either. Just thinking about it or talking about it's a problem. And I want to argue that's not true, and that knowledge is power. To the extent that you know about what other women's experience in physics has been or is, that's useful to you. And you can ignore it. You can decide it's irrelevant to you because of your personality or the situation you're working in. But I think knowing about it is never a problem. It should not be depressing. So if I somehow do depress you, I have failed. That's not what I'm trying to do. I do think that a very important thing has been said by several different people, which is recognizing that just because you are a woman in physics, that doesn't mean that whenever anything comes up that's about women in physics, it's about you. So very often, it's difficult to make that judgment. Is this about my being a woman? Is this about my being me? Or is this about that person? That choice of trying to think that through is a decision international students have to make, women students have to make, underrepresented minority students have to make. It's a judgment about what's going on here. And that judgment takes cognitive time, cognitive effort. It saps energy. So to some degree, you want to be able to push that question away and not care. So I endorse the people who said, try not to think it's about you so much and just push the issue away. But you will be more able to do that if you know something about how this works. How generally, not when it's about you. And then the last thing I want to say about that is, if you know about it, you can change things. So if you know something's really about a stereotype, you can name it and call it that and help us stop having stereotypes drive our interactions. I can only talk as a social scientist. I can't talk about physics. That's really a limit. However, I do want to say, my field looked like your field when I started, and it doesn't anymore. So it can change, and it can change in the course of a lifetime. It's slow, but it happens. So I want to remind you that physics is a great thing, science is a great thing, research is a great thing, teaching is wonderful. Science offers lots of pleasures to even psychologists. Psychologists have studied something called flow. It's that sense that I'm doing what I'm good at. I'm getting it. I'm really good at this. It can happen when you're cooking or doing a sport or when you're doing math or physics. That experience of flow, that sense of I'm doing what I'm good at, it's hard, but I can do it, is one of life's greatest rewards. Human beings work hard to get that experience, and science offers it. So that's one thing science offers you. There is the chance for discovery, for collaboration, the opportunity to contribute to knowledge or understanding. All those things have been talked about today.
There's the chance to pass knowledge on to others, whether through teaching or public communication. And then there's changing the field, if that's what you want to do. So there are lots of things for you to do in physics, and I want you to remember that. If this is what you want to do, there's lots of opportunities for it to be great. So what are the challenges? Given the opportunities. One of them's already come up today, which is the attributions of success and failure. And I want to just mention this in passing. There's a very stable pattern. It's not just in science. It's a gender difference that arises everywhere. Women make internal attributions about their successes and external attributions about their failures. What does that mean? The reason I succeeded is because they make internal, sorry, I think I said that backwards. They make internal attributions about their failures and external attributions about their successes. Why did I do well on that test? It was easy. Why did I do well on that test? I killed myself studying. Whereas, what would be an internal attribution of that success? Why I did well on that test? I'm good at this, right? If I do badly on a test, what's an internal attribution about why I did badly? I'm dumb. I didn't study enough. What would be an external attribution about the test? It was too hard. It was dumb. The teacher didn't give us enough time. So there are lots of external attributions. There is a big gender difference in this. Women tend to internalize failure, externalize success, and men tend to do the reverse. Does every man and every woman do this? No. But on average, this is a vulnerability. So fight it. Remember, when you're thinking, oh, it was probably an easy test, everybody probably got an A, this is an easy grade, think, wait, maybe not. So I'm with Vita on that you might just be awesome. So another challenge in physics that is more specific to physics is that you will operate as a minority. You are operating. You already are doing this as a minority in a male-dominated field. And we call that living with solo status or lack of critical mass, which means something very different to you. To us, critical mass means 30% of you in the room. Once humans see 30% of anything, they think that's about half. It's a cognitive practice. It's just what we do. So if you hear your professor using 30% female pronouns, it sounds about equal. So 30% is about equal, and you're not there yet as a field, but you'll get there. So sometimes you'll be the only woman. That happened to me a lot early in my career. Sometimes you'll be one of a few women. And sometimes maybe when you're in the Society for Women in Physics, you'll just be surrounded by women. And it's different. It's not better or worse, it's different. Then there's stereotyping. I'm going to talk about each of these: stereotyping, stereotype, threat. And then I'm going to talk about what you did a lot of talking about, so I'll give this less attention, this issue of having a full life. Okay, so being a solo or a minority is a phenomenon that makes you vulnerable to being stereotyped by the other people in the group. Okay, so the problem isn't that you're a woman in physics. The problem is other people are noticing, you're a woman in physics. What's that about? So, and that's already been commented on. Just push back on that. There's nothing weird about that. I'm a woman in physics because I like physics. So the problem is the other guy, not you. So what is a stereotype? Are they true when people say women can't do math or women can't do physics? Maybe they're right. They are not right. They are going on a stereotype. They are going on an association, a cognitive association in the brain between things that are familiar. So it's familiar to think men are better at some things and women are better at others. Women are naturally womankind. We all know women who are not womankind. We also know men who are womankind. So this is a connection that tells us about no person. It is a generalization true of some people, but it is totally useless in talking about any individual. So the only way to know if an individual woman is good at physics is to talk to that person. There's no average generalization that will tell us, and we all know men who are no good at physics, right? There are plenty of them. So why do stereotypes matter? They don't have to matter. But they do matter because they can limit opportunities. And we were talking about this indirectly when you were talking about asking for a raise. We have stereotypes about who does those things, who's pushy, who's assertive, who's a leader. And that can mean people pass over you for an opportunity because they think, well, she's so quiet, she's so modest. So that you can be pigeonholed by assumptions, and you don't want that. You don't want it to be difficult to get credit. There's research that shows that women get less credit for the work they do. You don't want that to happen if you're publishing an article. Stereotypes can also lead to interpretations of behavior that are different for women and men. So on this question of asking for a raise, the very same question can sound assertive in a man, kind of leaderly, and aggressive and pushy in a woman. So the same behavior is interpreted differently when it comes in the package of a woman or a man. You have to correct that, think about that. Do I care? Am I going to ask anyway? Am I going to ask in a way that will make it easier for people to not think of me that way? Am I going to say, I certainly don't want to be paid more than I'm worth, but I think I'm worth this much, and it wouldn't change the equity in the department. It can be assumed about you that you want to have a family when you maybe don't. It can be assumed about you that you want to get married or you want to have a partner, and maybe you do and maybe you don't really care that much about it. So people can make assumptions about what you're interested in or care about. But most importantly, and this is something many of you wanted to talk about, it can lead to self-doubt or feelings of not belonging and what has been called the imposter syndrome. So that's all very wasteful emotion, those self-doubts. And they are ubiquitous. Most people have them, women and men. But women in a field dominated by men very naturally attach some question to, some uncertainty to, is my self-doubt about gender? Is my self-doubt because, in fact, I don't belong? So it's reasonable to ask the question, but it's not the right answer. So, okay. Stereotype threat is a concept that is used by psychologists to think about what the burden is, the cognitive burden of knowing other people stereotype you. So the cognitive burden is that if I walk into a room, I know you notice I'm a female, and you have some expectations about that. You have some expectations about me based on the fact that I'm a psychologist, that I'm in women's studies. There's lots of stereotypes floating around. I just activated them all. And those stereotypes can worry me. I don't want to seem strident, because if I'm a strident women's studies professor, that's a bad thing. So I'm going to want to seem reasonable. And I'm going to want to seem like I understand what I'm talking about, and I'm not just ideological, right? So I'm going to try to counter stereotypes I think you have. If I spend my time thinking about that, I have less cognitive space for thinking about what I'm trying to tell you. So it's a waste of my emotional and cognitive energy, and it lowers my performance. So there's lots of research that shows if you mobilize these anxieties in a group of students about to take a math test, you can lower women's performance. We also know how to raise it, and this is what I want you to think about. There's something called stereotype lift. So this is when people are doing something that their group is supposed to be good at. Okay, so if African American boys are expected to be good at basketball, and white boys are expected not to be good at basketball, there are two processes that go on. The white boys are playing with a stereotype threat, black boys are playing with stereotype lift. So two things happen to pull their performance apart. Well, you can get stereotype lift as a woman in a male-dominated field by thinking about all the women who've made contributions to this field. So it's one of the reasons I'm so crazy about your buttons. I love that. And don't just wear them here. Keep them in front of you all the time. When you're not sure about whether you belong in the field, remember these women and lots of other women. And the research has shown that if you remind women who are about to take a math test about the contributions women have made to math, they do better on the test than they do when not reminded. So it's like magic. It's a grade escalator. So you can do this for yourself, remembering what women have accomplished, and remembering that a stereotype never says anything about an individual. I do want to say a word about this full life question. I try to avoid the word work-life balance, the term work-life balance, because for me, if I think, do I have work-life balance? It seems tricky. You know, I don't know, it's a balance. Is it really a balance? I worked a lot yesterday, but I was happy. I didn't work at all today, but I was also happy. Is that balance? I don't know. So I try not to think about balance. I just think, am I doing all the things I want to do? Am I having a good life? Am I enjoying what I'm doing? And everybody on the previous panel kind of pretty much said that, though, that's the right terms. That's true, and it's really hard for students to know that we don't work all the time. The thing you see us doing is working. That is not everything we do. So, and some scientists, some scholars, some academics talk about life as though that's all they do. And even they, mostly, they do lots of other things. And the ones who don't, you know, they're not strange. So I love the advice I think Henrietta gave of talk to people. Ask them what else they do. If you're curious about whether you can do physics and other things, talk to people about whether they do physics and other things, because they do. So many people have done, had full lives in this field, and you can too. In fact, most really good physicists, all scientists who need to turn it off. Rutherford, who was invoked earlier, was very serious about this. He locked the lab at 6 o'clock on Friday and would not let people in. So people were forced to stop doing science. He forced people to take vacations. It's a very important thing. People have to recharge. So don't ever forget them. So most of all, remember these are institutional problems, and I'm a person who's made institutional problems my problem, but that's not the same thing as I am the problem. Right? So I'd like you to make the institution your problem. If you go on in physics, I hope you will help change it. I hope you will help inform people about stereotypes being cognitive shortcuts that are wrong and incorrect. And that you are not all about all women. How you do does not determine how other people, how we should think about women. And as everyone has said, focus on the things you love and want to do, but help change the world, or at least physics. Somebody asked, how do you do that? How do you help bring more women into STEM and help the ones who are here to survive? The main thing I want to say about that to you is while you're in school, help each other. Help each other by reminding people, you know, lots of people found that test hard. It wasn't about you, or you didn't study. That's why you didn't do well on that test. You didn't do it. I've seen you do it. Or you had huge insight into that problem. The fact that you didn't have insight into those other problems, which we heard about this morning. It doesn't mean you can't do physics. It means you couldn't do those problems. It was your story. That you can end up being a physicist and having not had insight into some problems a long time ago. So make alliances with other women and with other men who get it, and help the ones who haven't got it sorted out yet. Be good to each other. And then also challenge stereotypes. I have been told many times by women students that they have been told by other fellow students, of course you did badly on that test, you're a woman, or no women do well in physics. Push back. That's just wrong. So don't let that be said. It's toxic in the air. And then wherever you end up, improve the institutional supports for everybody to be able to have full lives. That's important in industry, it's important in academia, it's important in government labs. These problems are endemic to the American workforce. What Henrietta said about how we love to work, it's kind of a problem some of the time. So the work ethic in America is intense. Sometimes it's not good enough to only have work all the time. So it's important to help institutions provide the family supports that make it possible for everybody to have a full and rich and satisfying career. Okay, that's everything I'm going to say, and I'm not going to let you ask me questions because I want all these other people to come up, because the next part of my job is to ask them questions. So I'm next going to moderate.